Hey everybody. Well, I saw The Rise of Skywalker a second time last night and thought, hey, let's do another video. And so I will lead off with just kind of explaining why I'm glad that they made the sequel trilogy and honestly even the prequels, and then get into just some specific points about Rise of Skywalker itself. With regard to the prequels and the sequels, I just like having the complete story, and there was always the promise of there being prequel movies ever since Episode 5 appeared before The Empire Strikes Back in 1980, and then of course Episode 4 underneath Star Wars in 1981 when that got re-released. And I've just always grown up knowing that there were to be prequel installments, and if you came to Star Wars after the original trilogy had come out, and kind of you always just knew Return of the Jedi to be the end of the quote unquote saga, I could see how this, you wouldn't, you'd disagree with me on this. But right from the beginning, and if people are familiar with what Gary Kurtz said about the saga and why he left to go do the Dark Crystal instead of Return of the Jedi, it's because in The Empire Strikes Back they were setting up a second trilogy, and they originally when the other was mentioned, being Leia, it was to kind of create a sense that Luke was expendable. And that was kind of that character's role in The Empire Strikes Back. But then when they were having their story treatments for Return of the Jedi, they said, okay, well, how can we have Return of the Jedi wrap up one part of the story, and then what will we do for the next trilogy? And so it was determined that the original, what we call the original trilogy, would just be the redemption of Anakin, and that the Emperor would not die, but Anakin would be redeemed, and Leia would be, crowned queen of the New Republic, or whatever they were going to call it, after they had at least defeated Darth Vader, at least as Darth Vader, and the Emperor to whatever degree. And then possibly Han was going to die, or Lando. Everybody knows about those stories and possibilities and things. And from that point on, they decided, well, the final showdown between good and evil will be this, what came to be known in Rise of Skywalker, this Force dyad, the boy and the girl twins joining together to defeat the Emperor. And which, of course, we got in The Rise of Skywalker. And then George decided that he was kind of getting burned out, and was like, that's too much. I just need to end this. And he did, sort of. He just wrapped up everything in Return of the Jedi and seemingly ended the saga with Palpatine dying. And Kurtz was annoyed and said, I don't want to just be a part of just a remake of A New Hope. And with just another, the hive of scum and villainy at the beginning, the rescue, Luke and Leia swinging across a pit, and the Death Star battle at the end. That didn't interest him, and so he left. That story is not what The Empire Strikes Back was setting up. And ever since I've known that, Return of the Jedi has really kind of felt like a bit of a letdown, an iconic letdown, a satisfying letdown, if that makes any sense. Meaning that they did really, the way they wrapped up the third act, it really was exciting, and they did a great job with wrapping up the story there. But, if you didn't know what was supposed to happen, and of course things did evolve after the original trilogy, even in 1983, even when George was going to basically stick to his guns and not do the original sequel trilogy, he told Mark Hamill, well, we'll come back in 30 years and we'll do you kind of passing Excalibur down to the next generation thing. Carrie Fisher even mentioned that in 1983. On David Letterman, he asked her, are there going to be any more? And she was like, yeah, do you really want to see like my kid, me and Han's kid with this crazy hair and joining the dark side and all that stuff, which is mind-blowing that she kind of just seemingly just said that offhand and kind of described Kylo Ren. But she did say, kind of confirm that, yeah, I think, that there's going to be something down the line that George was talking about. And so again, this all goes back to the original days of the original trilogy. And then, of course, in comics and novels, Palpatine came back, Dark Empire, Heir to the Empire. I mean, Return of the Jedi really didn't stay the end for very long. And so I don't see that continuing the story, especially in the original vein, betrays that. Return of the Jedi, as I've said, that was kind of the betrayal of the promise of the extended saga. But because of the delay, you had, people growing up within it, and it's part of their childhoods, and it's iconic, and, that's the end of the story. But if you knew what I knew, and if you just followed the what the original plans were and things like that, and you kind of always had this knowledge of what was supposed to be, picture like watching The Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson, and he releases Fellowship of the Ring exactly as it is. It's a perfect movie, 10 out of 10. But then when he's doing the Two Towers, he gets burned out, and he's like, I don't think I can do Return of the King. I'm going to wrap up everything with this movie. And so he gives us the Two Towers exactly as it is, with Helm's Deep and all that great action and the Ents marching on Isengard and all that great stuff. But instead of Frodo getting captured, he meets up with the Eagles and they take him to Mordor. And there's this big aerial battle where the ring wraiths are there with the fell beasts, and they're swooping around the eagles, and it's epic. And so he edits it all together where you've got Helm's Deep and Isengard, and then the eagles and the Nazgul above the volcano, and with Frodo dropping the ring in at the end. That could actually have been edited totally awesomely and been really, really epic and satisfying. Now, to those people who knew the actual novels, they could recognize that filmmaking wise, it was wrapped up nicely, but that they still felt a little bit gypped. And then picture Peter Jackson going, okay, you know what? Now that I'm sort of ready to do more, I kind of feel like Return of the King should be made in some way or form. But shoot, I waited, and now Elijah Wood and everybody's older. Can't really just continue, say that this is happening immediately after the Two Towers anymore. So let's just say that this is decades later, and somebody else is going to have to march up that mountain and kind of wrestle with Gollum at the end and throw it in, and then we'll have the other battles and things, and we will give people Return of the King. I think a lot of people would still want that, to just see it kind of completed, the real kind of quote unquote story, even if it was somewhat modified. And that's what that's what The Rise of Skywalker or the sequel trilogy is for me. Very glad that they made it. It's surreal, actually, to be seeing that extension, that continuation of the story that I never ever thought that we were really going to get. And to see it actually kind of match so well to just what Gary Kurtz would talk about. And so with the trilogies now, the way that I see them, I think they do fit together nicely. I don't really think it requires a lot of mental gymnastics. You've got the prequel trilogy, where it's Palpatine's rise to power, and with the pivotal moment in that trilogy being when he's electrocuting Mace Windu, and Anakin rather, helps the wrong guy. And then in Return of the Jedi, you got the same thing. Palpatine is electrocuting Vader. And man, why am I getting these names wrong? Palpatine is electrocuting Luke, and Anakin chooses the right person to help this time. And, instead of Mace Windu going off the side, instead of the good guy going over the side, Palpatine goes over the side. And so you've got the redemptive arc of Anakin there. Palpatine, of course, has his contingency where his spirit, moves to another body or a machine that creates another body, however you want to call it, or however you want to say that it works. And then of course the last trilogy, it's like, okay, the bad guys won the first one, the good guys won the second one, and then the third trilogy is the winner take all tiebreaker. It works, and it totally is the kind of the final word on that particular story. And you know what? And I even see, so not only does the prequel, match the original trilogy well enough, of course there's inconsistencies, people can call it inconsistencies between even the individual movies in the original trilogy. But they match together well enough. I'm not going to get into Jake Lloyd or Daniel Logan, all right? I'm just going to get into the main narrative. They match pretty well. I used to think that going back to The Last Jedi after Rise of Skywalker wasn't really going to work with the throne room scene, and that I kind of had to do some, headcanon interpretations to make the, like, why would, if Palpatine is Snoke and he wants to possess Rey, how can he be telling Kylo Ren to just execute her in front of him? And then I realized, watching Rise of Skywalker again, Palpatine literally does that same thing as Palpatine. At the beginning of the movie, Kylo Ren goes to Exegol, and Palpatine says, go find the Jedi girl, kill her. And then when they, after she gets away from Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer, he kind of communes with Palpatine remotely, and, like, telepathically. And Palpatine's like, why haven't you killed her? I said kill her. Or are you turning on me? I'll turn the whole fleet on you if you don't do what I say, blah, blah. I mean, he's very, very specific. Kill Rey. And so it doesn't conflict with what he would have, saying through Snoke, so to speak, in The Last Jedi. And then, of course, when Rey is there, he says, I actually didn't want you dead. I just wanted you to be brought here. Kind of like, I knew that the more Kylo pursued you, the more it would just drive you here. And that even when it seemed like you were going to die, you were going to end up here either way. And so, I mean, even in the same movie, they overlap with that Last Jedi throne room scene, which is great. And then, let's see. Kylo Ren is just a beast in the movie, and I just love his character. He is absolutely my favorite non-OT character. Above Mandalorian, above Baby Yoda, the characters in Rogue One. He is awesome in this. I mean, he just marches around like he's John Wick, this Sith Lord. He owns any place that he goes to, whether it's Mustafar at the beginning, is it Kimiji, I think, is the place where Zori Bliss is, and he goes there, and he bests Rey in every duel they have, because they do kind of fight remotely, but sort of still have a duel where they're connecting sabers when he's on Kimiji and she's up on the Star Destroyer, and he just walks all over her on the Death Star wreckage, and he's just fantastic in the movie. So he's an excellent villain in this. He's not even the main villain, but he's still an excellent villain, and she can't get away from him. She can't defeat him, and it makes both of them more likable as a result. And they kind of brought it and elevated them both in this last movie, but it does kind of retroactively, I think, make it improves the previous films and their characters in the previous films. Once again, Palpatine is just the Phantom Menace. And I really like that. Once again, he's got his puppets. Instead of having a Newt Gunray or a Dooku as his puppet, where he's playing both sides, and one of them, can always turn on him, like Vader, or he's like, I'm going to hedge my bets with this. I'm going to control the puppets. I'm going to actually speak through the puppets. And so it's like he's got his kind of standard playbook, that he does, where he manipulates things and makes the same speeches and things, but it's like he hones them, he kind of fine tunes them, as he gets defeated in certain areas. And, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought there, with the puppets and things. So anyway, I liked how he was an extension of his previous self there. Um, and it was genius, even if it was come up with at the last second. I don't know what it is with these quote unquote problematic Disney productions, Rogue One, Solo, Rise of Skywalker, but the ones that have the most behind the scenes where they seem like a cluster, they pull them out at the last second and then they make the best movies. And you know what? There was an element of that in the original trilogy too. The Empire Strikes Back was an absolute mess. And no, I'm not saying that The Empire Strikes Back and The Last Jedi are the same and people reacted to the same. Hell no. Empire Strikes Back was always seen as a masterpiece. I don't care what Rian Johnson says. But let's see here. I recorded a video and I ran out of memory, and so now I'm trying to think of what I've said in the last one, and I might be repeating in this one. Carrie Fisher did stick out as this time, unfortunately, as obviously just being recycled footage that was, kind of, they recontextualized and tried to have Rey speaking to her to elicit the responses that she said, 4 years ago, and have it kind of make sense in this one. But you could always tell that they weren't really interacting with each other. Rey would say something and Carrie Fisher would say something that was either clearly directed at somebody else originally or meant something else originally. They did the best they could. I wouldn't have want them. Their other two choices were to just write her out of the story since she passed away, or to just, manipulate her mouth and have her say lots of extra things that does fit better with the story, or even maybe have her like fully CG or something like Rogue One. They did the best that they could. It's a bummer that she passed away, but they did the best she could. Unfortunately, you kind of can notice it, so I'm glad that they didn't overdo it. She's really not in the movie that much. As far as the Goonies knife, it's still kind of silly, but I had forgotten watching it the second time that when she picked up the knife and Poe and Finn are like, "Why are you grabbing the knife from the Star Destroyer? We already have the information from the inscription in C-3PO's memory," and she's like, "It's just a feeling that I'm supposed to take it." So to me, I'm like, okay, it's silly. She had to be standing in the exact same spot and holding it, and kind of crazy to think about the convenience of all of that. But because she said it was a feeling and that the Force was guiding her on taking it in the first place, I can just be like, okay, the Jedi spirits that are kind of guiding her from the other side, they knew that she was going to be standing in the right place where the dagger would work, and so they told her to take it. Or that even going all the way back, if you want to say it's the Force that's sort of manipulating certain things, you could just say that the Death Star wreckage, specifically landed in that spot, guided by the Force, because it knew that 35 years later she'd be standing there with the dagger. It's fine. It's fantasy, let's see. So, and then with the end battle. I enjoyed the space battle a little more this time, knowing that it wasn't going to just be like Rogue One. It was fun, and the ending with Ben Solo and Rey against Palpatine, I just found it to be fantastic. I did notice how much they borrowed from Endgame, not just the Lando with the on your left, but with the kind of mimicking the final exchange between Thanos and Iron Man, with Thanos saying, I am inevitable, and Tony Stark saying, and I, pause, am Iron Man. And in Rise of Skywalker, you have Palpatine saying, I am all the Sith, and Rey says, and I am all, and then she pauses, the Jedi. And then, power is unleashed from her, and then she dies. I mean, it's very much like, Tony using the stones. But hey, go watch The Dam Busters and then watch A New Hope. Lucas didn't just copy one exchange; he copied like 50 from The Dam Busters, and it's edited like pretty much all, like the whole trench run, the Death Star attack. He just copied Dam Busters. Now, Dam Busters didn't come out the exact same year as A New Hope, so maybe it's a little more blatant, I guess, with Rise of Skywalker. But it worked. It worked. And it was fantastic. I don't think they should have not gone that route. Seeing how it played out. And then the last thing I'll close with here is Lando and Jana at the end. Kind of joking about the creepy, hey, let's find out where you're from type of a thing. He really, watching it again, Billy D. Williams did not play it in a creepy way. He really kind of came across as like the sort of older family member looking out, He's like, hey, how about we find out, And there's no kind of like come hither, creepiness to it. It's a little out of the blue still, but it didn't. It played a lot better the second time. So I'm probably forgetting things, but I'm just nervous that I'm going to repeat things that I've already said in this video, and so I'll cut it short here. Cut it short. How long have I been talking? But yeah, I love Rise of Skywalker, and I think it did a nice job of closing loops that JJ had created, correcting things that missteps from Rian Johnson, but also playing off of the good stuff from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It really does feel like a legit trilogy. And that the whole, well, what's this trilogy about? I don't even know. That's what people were saying before Rise of Skywalker. Well, it's about Rey learning that she is who she is, a Palpatine. We thought that Rian Johnson threw that away, and so that therefore it kind of broke the trilogy. Like now it has no purpose. No, it does. It is about Rey's lineage, big time, and about the Phantom Menace resurfacing and kind of doing battle one last time. So it just kind of plays as you really can just look at it as a full saga, and it works, and I really enjoy it, and I'll probably even go and watch the salty parts of the prequels from time to time, and I'm glad we've got the full story. So I'll go ahead and close with that, and thanks for watching and listening.